could take on the shot. Fabian Sherwin.
All right, guys, it's the final game of the season. Can Newcastle win this game and qualify into Europe? Can we get our tactics right? Can we defend set pieces? Can we defend well and can we score well? Who will be our key men and what's the score prediction, guys? I'll let you know right at the end of the show. And I'll let you know that because I myself haven't figured it out and I'm literally going to be working it through with all of you. So without further ado, let me share my screen with you guys and put this up on the stage. So this is the head-to-heads currently. Newcastle, let me get the screen up. This is the form we've got. So Newcastle in the last at least 5-6 meetings, apart from the game when we lost 1-0 to Brentford. Newcastle, I've drawn them a couple, but have won the rest of those games. And so Newcastle, both home and away against Brentford, have been doing really, really well. However, in this season, as we scroll down here, if you look at the overall form in the last 6 games, 3 wins for Newcastle, 1 draw and 2 losses. Obviously, the frustrating loss to Man United away. As Howe said, he went from the game frustrated, he went to sleep frustrated, and he woke up frustrated. I think that sums up how I felt, to be honest with you. I don't know if about you guys. I felt frustrated because, yes, Man United took their chances in the key moments, but we created 6 big chances to their 2, and we converted only 2, whereas Man United obviously converted 3 goals. And so that was the frustrating part, where the conversion rate, which is really high for us, really good, we're really good at scoring goals, was not there. And we had a couple of one-on-one chances with Isak, with Longstaff, and it wasn't good. And obviously we had a rough decision, poor decision in terms of not getting the penalty. And so it was a frustrating game for us. I think we got to take the benefits, the positives from that game against Brentford and continue creating chances and doing better in our finishing. I think that's the main thing. Brentford themselves have not been too bad in the last 6 games either, where they've won 3 games and they've drawn 2 and lost 1. So slightly better than Newcastle, which has been which is really, really impressive. Newcastle away from home. I'll go straight to, well, let me go to the home so you can see Brentford. So Brentford have been, in the last 6 games, a lot more resolute at home. And even though obviously they still concede quite a few goals, and they're on a -3, they've drawn 4. They've drawn 4 games. They've won 1 and they lost 1, which was to Liverpool, which is nothing bad to say, because they have drawn against Chelsea. They have drawn against Manchester United, who we've played. They've drawn against Brighton. They've drew against Fulham. So they've drawn against really tough teams that are in and around us. So Brentford have been a lot more resolute in their form. So Newcastle coming into this game with a poor away record. If you look at Newcastle's away record, we're even below in the overall away records. We're below Brentford in the away records, and it's been dismal. 4 losses and 2 wins. No draws whatsoever, no in between with Newcastle at all. There's no grey area, should I say, for Newcastle at all. So that's the negative part of it. Let's go into Brentford tactically, into the game tactically. What has made Brentford so resolute? So I'm showing you guys the game between Bournemouth and Brentford, and I think this is an away game, and Brentford are there in the blue, Bournemouth are there in the orange. What's the interesting thing about Brentford as well is they play the 4-3-3 like us, and you can see the 3 centre backs at the back. That's Pinnock, Collins, and Ayer. Tall, big, strong, athletic, and decent on the ball, and that worries me for set pieces as well. So we have to get the set piece game right against Brentford. And I think if we do that, we stand a greater chance in terms of winning this game. The other thing is, I want to point out, is just how congested they make that midfield with the 27, 26, 17, and 24. And those are 27, if you guys can see on here, is Van Aanholt, Norgard, Damsgaard, and who's the 24? There was a 24. can't find a 24. Where are you? Yeah, where is the 24? Sorry, it's Damsgaard, the 24. Yano, Vanguard, Damsgaard, and Mbeumo. And so they did that really well in terms of taking that kind of control of the midfield and allowing their wingers to push up, or you see Reguilon pushing up a lot. So that's what their preference is between all their defenders, is to push up Reguilon. So Reguilon is like our version of Lewis Hall. He's good on the ball. In terms of what Reguilon can do, he's good on the ball, decent with the crosses as well. Obviously, his one weakness is actually defending-ish in terms of recovery tackles and stuff like that. But so I think Newcastle may target that area, especially in a transition. But we have to also defend it and look out for it. And obviously, their key men up front will be Brian Mbeumo and Ivan Toney himself. And if I fast forward onto the game against Fulham, so even though they drew that game, you guys will notice that in the orange, obviously, is Brentford. And on their right side is where their main focus at the attack was. And interestingly, both the Fulham and the Bournemouth game for Brentford, both Fulham and Bournemouth play a 4-2-3-1 system as well. And you guys can see here again, as in the previous game before, they do leave that they can. In this game, they chose to leave a slight gap in the middle between the 6 and 27, but they really were very aggressive against Fulham, especially on that right side where Brian Mbeumo, Ivan Toney are, and I'm gonna say it's who's number 17, 24, 17, 24. Tony, no, it's not Tony. Yeah, it's 7. Sorry, it is. It's Tony and Mbeumo, Damsgaard, and Norgard. So they were really trying to kick the door down on that right hand side, and so they were really, really aggressive. And again, they took the chances in terms of the defense. So you got 5 and 27, 22 there, and again, even the 20s really pushing up. Collins, Pinnock, and Aya. So they're really, really aggressive. But again, you can see how much confidence Thomas Frank has in terms of how Brentford can defend from the back. And so, but at the same time, though, they've conceded a lot of goals and they've been fighting relegation. So anyone might say as well, they take those risks, but has it really been paying off as it should be for them? And so there's definitely their opportunities, and we're going to discuss what those opportunities are a little bit later in the show for Newcastle United. Now, I'm going to fast forward us to Newcastle's game before we get into the tactics. So this is Newcastle against Man United, and there's one thing I wanted to point out. I don't want to dwell on it too long because it was a difficult game to as a fan to take. I was hoping that I would draw or win the game, and for the first time ever in the Premier League, guaranteed finish against Manchester United instead of taking to the final game. Again, I'm dwelling on it. I noticed that in terms of obviously it was a very Newcastle in my view, apart from the defending, I felt that we got our setup right in terms of how we played. I know people disagree with the personnel in terms of what I've seen on social media, having to start Joe Linton over Anderson. Whereas Callum Wilson, there's rumours about that, why he didn't start. But at the same time, as I said, we created massive opportunities. We had the better proportion of the ball. We just failed to convert. We created the right moments in that game as well. And so what I noticed again is, Longstaff, number 36, staying very close to Bruno in the 39 and behind Isak. And that's why we was able to take a little bit more control over that midfield area and be able to pass the ball. And it had to be done, especially against a double pivot. So there's lots to take positives from in this game. It was in terms of performance, it was a decent performance, but in terms of especially an attacking display and creating chances. But again, like I said, conceding from set pieces and not being as aggressive and not being as what Howe said in terms of ruthless in our defensive work. And he sort of hinted at the possible changes that he could make going forward. Now, I'm going to go into the actual tactics of the game between between Newcastle and Brentford. So let me, obviously it's a 4-3-3 versus 4-3-3. I'm going to show two aspects of that game. So not all of it, obviously. And that is, first of all, let's go into the lineup. So you guys can see, obviously the 4-3-3, 4-3-3. I back Wilson to start, and I back, as Howe had said, that he is fit to start. And I think it's a game that he has to be involved in. He has to be involved. I'm sure that they're grown men, they can bury the hatchet in terms of whatever the rumors are about their relationship recently. Gordon, I've took a chance and said that he'll start. And if he doesn't, we've got Barnes. Obviously, we're kind of sitting on we're hoping that that his Achilles haven't suffered too much damage and he's fit to play. I've put Joe Linton over Anderson because I think we need to really take control over that midfield. As you can see, as we saw previously, Brentford love to congest that midfield and push up and be aggressive, and we need the physical presence and strength of Joe Linton to not only protect Gomes but take control over that midfield and possibly allow Lewis Hall to push up a lot more and link up with Gordon as they have been recently. Obviously for Brentford, my apologies, guys. In terms of lineups, I couldn't get Ivan Toney on lineup, so I had to use some random guy. Apologies for that, but it is meant to be Ivan Toney in the middle there, Lewis Potter on the left. I got Lewis Potter twice, but it's not. It's meant to be Brian Mbeumo on that right and Lewis Potter on that left, and then you've got the midfield of Brentford of Janelt, Norgard, and Damsgaard, who are all, from what I've seen them play, they're all very good on the board. Norgard, especially, really decent deep line playmaker. I do think the weakness might be in terms of their off the ball. They're not as physically imposing as Joe Linton and Gomes, even Longstaff in terms of athletically. So maybe that might be the weak point there that Howe might look forward into the game. I've also said put the return of Shaw. He started, obviously, he played, no, he didn't start. He came in the last 10, 20 minutes of the Manchester United game, and that was him, Joe Linton, and Almiron. And obviously, Trippier started at the beginning, so because Livramento had a knock, so I fully anticipate that these guys will be in our final game of the season against Brentford. So this is the other aspect I wanted to start. Let me just get into it right now. I'm going to look at what I think it's going to look like when we're pressing, when Brentford have the ball, when they're taking the goal kick, for instance. They like to play it from the back and us pressing them. And I'm going to also switch around what it's going to be like the other way around, because I do think that's going to be key in terms of who takes control over this game. And the one key, and it's a 4-3-3 versus 4-3-3. Type of situation. I do think it might be quite an open game. What I think is likely to happen is, obviously, you'll have a Burn, Shaw, and Trippier in kind of making up the back three. And what I anticipate is, depending on what side they press, but I think it'll be Burn, Shaw, and Trippier in particular, kind of making up the back of Lewis Hall, either doing one or two things. The first, which I think is the more likely, joining up alongside Bruno Gomes and adding another body into that midfield. Both players of technical quality, and I can see them playing joining up with Gordon in that kind of triangle and trying to pass the ball through, with Joe Linton's physical presence keeping both Norgard and Damsgaard occupied. And the idea being trying to get that ball onto Wilson, trying to get that ball onto Gordon as quickly as possible, and be able to turn on Aya, be able to turn on Collins, and trying to get shots off. Wilson obviously has that physical presence, and he'll be battling it out of Pinnock, he'll be battling it out of Collins and Aya, especially. I don't think Reguilon wants to be involved in that part too much. And I think if we move the ball quickly, he'll be totally out of the game, and it'll be a battle between Wilson, Gordon, and Isak. It'll be interesting how Isak fares against Pinnock and Collins. But I think Wilson's going to be very, very key in terms of occupying both Pinnock and Collins in that regard. And obviously, Joe Linton is going to be key in occupying Norgard, Damsgaard, and possibly the other midfielders as well. Obviously, Bruno is going to be key in terms of the other end, and I'll explain it in terms of when we have possession and Brentford are playing up against us. Brentford obviously have their if should Brentford get the ball, they've got Mbeumo, Ivan Toney, and Lewis Potter on the other side, and so we have to be very positioned very, very well against any possible through balls, which Brentford love to play. And Regular's going to be providing them options down that left side, especially, and they're going to be trying to press up on Trippier and kind of support Ivan Toney, especially. Or if they want to switch it to Mbeumo, you're going to see Damsgaard, Van Held, all of those guys trying to support from that backside, from behind as well, and trying to go against Burn, testing for pace, which you know would happen. And so Newcastle have to be very, very well positioned in terms of that. I do think, though, that we can win in the press. So this is the other end of it. When we're playing from out the back, and we know that we don't like to. I think having Shaw return for us, it super helps us in terms of from playing out the back, because you've got the left foot of Dan Burn, who's decent with the short passes in particular, but then you've also got the right foot of Shaw, who's long balls, add another option. And if you put Wilson there as well, you know how good he can be with his back to goal. And again, keeping Collins and Pinnock and possibly Aya, depending on who he chooses to go for, occupied, whilst Gordon and Isak try to pick up any kind of the second ball and try to run at those guys and take advantage of that. So that's going to be a very, very key thing. Again, like I've said, I don't think Damsgaard, Norgard, and Jano are overly athletic players. And should the ball come to Bruno short and he's able to fend off the challenges from Norgard on Damsgaard, and who kind of do leave gaps in that midfield, which I would, without seeing all of Brentford's games, I've seen 2 or 3, I would wager those gaps, they leave gaps in their midfield. And that's what opens up the opportunity for teams to turn around and run at their defenders, and hence why they've conceded so goals, both home and away, actually, as well. And so Bruno is going to be absolutely key in terms of being able to get that ball. Shaw is going to be absolutely vital in terms of his passing and what he can do. And obviously Wilson, in my view, not only from a scoring perspective, but occupying those big defenders, not by himself, obviously, but he's going to be an absolute nuisance with Pinnock and Collins. And our main point would be to try and isolate either of those back three of Brentford against Isak and then against Gordon. And I have a feeling with Wilson and Isak playing, especially, who are competing for that number 9 spot, I would bank that our conversion rate increases quite a bit as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I do think that Brentford, at first I thought because it's their last home game, they're going to be gun-ho about it. But I think if I think Thomas Frank sees Shaw is back, he might occupy a mid-block against Newcastle, which would be the wiser thing to do. But the occasion, it's a home game, it's the last game of the season, and I think I wouldn't bet against them chancing it. And on our bench, obviously, we'll have Barnes to bring on, Anderson to bring on, should the game be tight, and or Newcastle are chasing, which I hope they're not doing at that stage as well. It's going to be a tight game, guys. It's going to be a tight game. Even while I'm talking to you, I'm still trying to summarize in my mind what's going to be the score. I'm going to back Newcastle to win this game 4-2. I think we're going to concede goals, but I think we can score goals as well, and especially if we see the return of Wilson. I'm gonna stick my chest out and say we'll win 4-2. We'll qualify for Europe, and if results go our way, we can even finish 6th. But let me know what you guys are. Who are your key men? For me, it's Dan Burn, it's Wilson, it's Bruno Guimaraes. Those are going to be the key guys for us, and obviously Isak and Gordon. What's your score predictions? I'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time, take care and God bless, folks.